Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the history of the Bible,
Okay.
specifically how it was preserved and transmitted from around the time of Constantine to Martin Luther.
Yeah, it's a really interesting period.
Yeah, and we've got some great sources to dig into.
Absolutely.
So let's get right into it. One of the first things our sources mention is that there were some groups challenging the authority of the church pretty early on,
Hmm.
like the Albigenses.
Oh yeah.
They had some different biblical teachings than what the Catholic Church was saying, right?
Right. They really emphasized a direct connection with God through the scriptures,
Yeah.
and they rejected a lot of the Catholic Church's hierarchy and practices.
So that must have led to some pretty intense disagreements.
It did. There was actually this big debate called the Colloquy of Montreal in 1207 AD,
Okay.
where St. Dominic debated with the Albigenses.
Saint Dominic, the founder of the Dominican order?
That's the one.
Wow, so what happened? Did he convince them to change their minds?
Actually, he lost the debate.
He lost.
He lost. But instead of like really engaging with their arguments, head on,
Uh-huh.
he kind of focused on how the Albigenses presented themselves,
What do you mean?
like their piety. He thought they were just putting on a show of holiness.
It's almost like he couldn't argue with their theology, so he went after their image instead.
Yeah, it's an interesting tactic.
Yeah. It makes you think about how the church dealt with dissenting views back then.
Yeah, for sure.
But even with all that going on, there were other groups working to preserve the Bible, like the Waldenses.
Oh, the Waldenses, they're fascinating.
Right.
They were safeguarding scriptures way before the Reformation.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking as early as the 2nd century.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea they went back that far.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's tough because we only have a few of their original Bibles left.
Right, I bet.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what those Bibles look like, though, and what language they were even written in.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
It must have been so difficult to copy and distribute them back then.
Absolutely, a labor of love, for sure.
For sure.
So speaking of big historical shifts, what about the fall of Constantinople in 1453? How did that impact things?
That's a huge turning point. Constantinople was the heart of the Byzantine Empire and the center of Greek scholarship.
Right, and when it fell to the Ottoman Turks, what happened?
A lot of Greek-speaking scholars fled westward into Europe,
Okay.
and they brought their precious Greek manuscripts with them.
So all of a sudden, Western Europe has access to these original Greek texts of the New Testament.
Exactly. And that led to some pretty significant revisions in how the Bible was understood.
I bet. Like they could go back to the source and see if there had been any errors or mistranslations in the Latin versions.
You got it. It was a major development.
Wow. Okay. Then on top of all that, you have this other huge development happening around the same time.
Mhm.
The printing press.
Oh, yeah. Gutenberg's invention was a total game changer. You can't overstate its importance.
I mean, before the printing press, it took almost an entire year to produce just one handwritten copy of the Latin New Testament.
And then, bam, hundreds of copies could be produced in a single year.
It's mind-boggling.
Right. It's like going from riding a horse to flying in a spaceship.
Exactly. So with all these new copies floating around, what happened?
Well, it opened up a whole new world for scholars,
Okay.
like Erasmus of Rotterdam.
Ah, Erasmus. Wasn't he the guy who created those comprehensive Greek New Testaments with fresh Latin translations?
That's him. He was all about accuracy.
Yeah.
He believed that going back to the original Greek would make the translations much more faithful to the true meaning of the scriptures.
So what kind of things did he uncover? Did he find any interesting mistranslations?
Oh, yeah. One that really stands out is the word repentance.
Okay.
In some Latin versions, it had been translated as penance, which, emphasizes outward acts of atonement.
Right.
But in the original Greek, it's more about an internal change of heart, turning away from sin.
That's a big difference.
It is. And it has a huge impact on how you understand your relationship with God.
Absolutely. And Erasmus's work had a ripple effect, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He was like this crucial link leading up to the Reformation.
Yeah, because he influenced guys like Martin Luther and William Tyndale.
Exactly. Luther's German translation came out in 1522, and Tyndale's English translation laid the groundwork for the King James Version.
So we've got lost debates, fleeing scholars, new technology. It's incredible how all these things are tied to the story of the Bible.
It is. It's quite a journey.
It is. But our sources also mention some reformers who were already shaking things up before the Reformation even officially started.
You talking about John Wycliffe?
Yeah, Wycliffe. He translated the Bible into English over a century before the Reformation. That's wild.
It is. He was way ahead of his time. He anticipated a lot of Luther's ideas.
Really?
Yeah, like emphasizing the authority of Scripture and rejecting certain Catholic doctrines. He even started a movement called the Lollards.
Wow, so he was like a forerunner, planting the seeds for this huge shift in religious thinking.
Absolutely. And his translation was a big deal. Just imagine being able to read the Bible in your own language when the church had controlled its interpretation for so long.
That must have been really powerful. It feels like we've already uncovered so much about the Bible's journey.
We have, but there's still more to come.
Okay, I'm ready for it. What else have we got?
Well, what about the discovery of ancient manuscripts
Yeah.
and the rise of textual criticism? That added a whole new layer of complexity.
Right. We'll have to dive into that next time.
Sounds good. So, we were talking about how some groups were already questioning the church's authority way before the Reformation.
Right, like the Albigenses and the Waldenses. It's
Mm.
pretty amazing how they stood up for what they believed, even when it was dangerous.
It was. And then you have these incredible scholars like Erasmus and Wycliffe who dedicated their lives to making the Bible more accessible and accurate. They were real pioneers.
It's like they built a bridge across time, bringing these ancient texts closer to their own world and making them relevant to everyone.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And their work had a huge impact. It fueled those reform movements and gave people new ways to think about faith.
Which eventually led to all the different Christian denominations we see today.
Right. It's mind-blowing when you think about how all these events and individuals are connected. It's all part of this big tapestry of history.
It is. But there were still some challenges and controversies along the way, right?
Absolutely. Like the discovery of ancient manuscripts.
Oh, yeah. Like the Codex Sinaiticus.
Exactly. That one really shook things up. It forced people to re-examine what they thought they knew about the Bible.
Yeah, it's like suddenly they had to confront the fact that the text itself had a history.
And with the rise of textual criticism, you have all these scholars digging into those manuscripts,
Yeah.
comparing different versions, looking for the most accurate readings.
So it wasn't just about finding these old documents, it was about understanding what they could tell us about the Bible's journey.
Precisely. It became a quest to piece together the puzzle of the Bible's past.
And that led to some pretty heated debates.
Oh, for sure. Especially in the 19th century. It was a time of intense scrutiny and reevaluation.
We mentioned some of the key players before, like Westcott and Hort.
Mm-hmm. They were really trying to get back to that original text,
And then there were more controversial figures like Tischendorf and Simonides.
whose discoveries kind of threw a wrench into the works for some people.
Yeah, they raised all these questions like what was the earliest version? How accurate were the copies? Where did these variations come from?
Right. It was like a detective story trying to unravel the mysteries of the Bible.
Speaking of mysteries, you mentioned those two documentaries, Tares Among the Wheat and Bridge to Babylon. Do they touch on this stuff?
They do. Tares Among the Wheat kind of explores this idea that there might have been deliberate changes or forgeries introduced to the text.
So it's looking at the possibility of tampering.
Right. And Bridge to Babylon focuses on the influence of Babylonian culture on Jewish thought and how that might have shaped the Old Testament.
So both documentaries are kind of looking at external influences on the Bible.
Exactly. And they really highlight the fact that the Bible isn't just about the words themselves. It's this living narrative that people have been debating and reinterpreting for centuries.
And we can't forget about the printing press. We talked about it a little before, but it deserves more attention. What a revolutionary invention.
I know, right? Before Gutenberg, imagine a world where only scholars and the clergy had access to the Bible.
And then, boom, suddenly anyone who could read could experience it for themselves.
It was a huge shift in how knowledge was shared.
It democratized the Bible in a way.
You could say that.
Mhm.
And it had a huge impact on religious thought. People could interpret it for themselves, which led to more literacy and discussion.
And that technological thread continues today with the
Mhm.
internet and all these online resources. The Bible is more accessible than ever.
Absolutely. We've come a long way from those early handwritten manuscripts.
But even with all these changes in technology and access, the core message of the Bible remains the same.
Yeah, it's a testament to its enduring power.
And a reminder that the story of the Bible isn't over. It's still unfolding.
Each generation adds its own layer of understanding and interpretation. It's a journey that we're all a part of.
Okay, now I'm even more excited to see what else we're going to uncover. Let's dive into the final part of this deep dive. Well, we're back for our final segment, exploring this incredible journey of the Bible.
It's amazing, isn't it, how it's been preserved and reinterpreted over all these centuries?
I know. It makes you think about the people behind it,
Yeah.
Their beliefs, their struggles.
Their desire to connect with something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. And the impact it's had. It's not just about religion either.
Right. It's woven into the fabric of history and culture.
Absolutely. One thing that really sticks out to me is how everything's connected. the fall of Constantinople, the printing press, textual criticism, it all played a role.
Yeah, it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
And the story's not over yet.
That's what's so exciting. New discoveries, new interpretations. It just keeps going.
It's a living text, constantly evolving.
So where do we go from here? What's the
Yeah.
main takeaway from all this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that the Bible isn't some static artifact.
Right.
It's dynamic. It has so many layers.
So we shouldn't approach it with a one-size-fits-all mentality.
Exactly. Approach it with curiosity, humility, a willingness to learn.
And always keep that historical and cultural context in mind.
Oh, absolutely. We have to understand the world it was written in
Otherwise, we might impose our own modern views on it.
and miss out on its richness and complexity.
And be open to the idea that our understanding might change as we learn more.
The journey of faith is a lot like the journey of the Bible itself. It's all about growth and discovery.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I have to say, I'm feeling a sense of awe after this deep dive.
Me too. It's humbling to think about the path the Bible's traveled to reach us.
And to realize that we're part of that ongoing story.
Exactly.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring.
Dive deeper into the sources, seek out different perspectives.
Don't be afraid to let the Bible challenge you, inspire you,
Who knows? You might uncover something that speaks directly to your own life.
and contribute to the next chapter in this amazing journey.
What a thought.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, happy exploring.